Hi, welcome to this video, and today I'm going to be going through a really powerful resource known as Anki, which is for flashcards. I'm going to go through how you install it, some of the things it can do. I'm also going to go through how you can create and import a CSV file into Anki, which is a really fast way to create multiple flashcards in one go. So, what you have to do in your web browser is if you search Anki, A-N-K-I, and click this top link up here, Anki Powerful Intelligent Flashcards. So firstly, if you click up here on AnkiWeb, Anki does have a web browser that is completely free to use. You can click add and you can create front, back, you can create basic flashcards, you can add it to decks. The instructions on Anki's website are really great. So if you don't know how to do anything, if you just Google what you want to do, the documentation on how to use Anki is really excellent. So I'm not going to go through that in this video. I'm just going to go through some of the basic things that you can do and how to download it and how to create CSVs. If you want, you can also download the desktop version, which is what we will be doing because the desktop version is what you need to be able to upload CSVs. You can get that for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And again, this is completely free to use. If you want to use Anki on mobile, you can get it for iOS and Android. Android, again, is completely free to use. If you want it on iOS, it is $24.99. So Anki does this because this is how they fund the development of Anki to make it free for the other options. So if you really, I suggest first try out Anki on the desktop and the web browser, see if you enjoy it. If you really feel the need to be able to take your flashcards and use them while you're on the go, then maybe check it out. I've personally not used it, so I can't recommend it, whether it's good or not. I'm sure there's lots of videos with reviews as to whether it's worth it. The great thing about using Anki is that all of the flashcards you create or import will sync between different applications. So if I created some flashcards in Windows 10, as soon as I then log in onto AnkiWeb, I would be able to see my flashcards in their decks here. You can see I've got the option to log out because I've already logged in. So what you want to do is you want to pick your version. So make sure you click the correct one. That will then download an installer. Then all you need to do is you click on the installer, you run it, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It will tell you what to do, and you then install Anki wherever you want. So let's jump into what that will look like. So when you open up the Anki desktop application, it will look like this. So if you had previously made decks, they are here. You can see there's a default one. If you want to add new decks, so that's if you want to add cards, you add them this way by clicking add. As you can see, there are loads of features. You can change the type. You can also, if you click manage, you can create your own types. There's a lot, but thankfully, Anki's documentation on the website is fantastic. The way to think about Anki is you can do very simple front and back flashcards that you can use on the desktop and if you want to on your phone, but also if you really want some more complicated flashcards, there's ways you can do that as well. If we click on decks, we bring these up here. Again, there's ways that we can, if we click at the bottom down here, you can click create deck. So if I wanted to, today, let's create a test practice deck. Okay, and you can see I've created this deck here. So what I'm going to do now is let's go through how we can see here import file. Let's go through how we can create a CSV with our flashcards in and import that into Anki to very quickly make some flashcards. So here we are in Google Sheets. Now, what I'm going to show you also will work for Microsoft Excel and any other spreadsheet application you have that is able to convert the spreadsheet into a CSV. So how you create your spreadsheet will depend upon what type of flashcards you are trying to create. Now that will again depend on how you set them up. Again, refer to the documentation for more complicated features. For the basic flashcards we're going to make, you're going to want a front, a back, and we're going to include a tag as well because that could be really useful. So for the front, generally this tends to be your question. For the back tends to be the answer, and we're going to include a bit here for tags, and I'll explain what these are used for. So just to make it simple, we're just going to say it's question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to have the answers be A, B, C, D, E, and F. Just to, not answer, A, because it auto completed, just to make it easy. So obviously, if you were making your flashcards, you would write down your actual questions, you write down your actual answers. So let me explain tags. Tags are things you can add to the flashcards, which allows you to filter them to find specific questions. So for example, if this was for schoolwork, so you're making these flashcards for schoolwork, potentially question 1, 2, and 3, these might appear on test 1, test, yeah, so all of these will appear on test 1. Question 4 and 5 might be questions that are only going to appear on test 2. But question 6 appears on test 1 and test 2. So you might have noticed something funny about how I'm typing it. I've not put a space between test and 1. This is because the way Anki reads your tags is every time it sees a space, it then starts a new tag. So test 1 without spaces is just test 1. Down here, we've got test 1 space test 2. Anki will read this as 2 tags, a tag test 1 and a tag test 2. It's important that for tags to be the same, so if I wanted to find flashcards for test 1, that they all have the same spelling. Okay, if I did this and put a space between test and 1, that Anki will give the tag test and it will give the tag 1. So it's important that you remember that. This is a great feature which I'll show you because you can create filtered decks. So if you had loads of questions for all of your tests, but you only wanted to revise questions that were going to appear on test 1, you can create a temporary filtered deck that is just based upon questions from test 1. So this is really useful. So this is the most basic layout. And if you want to convert this into a CSV, now this is how you do it on Google Sheets. It'll be very similar on any other spreadsheet software. We click File, we click Download, and you'll see here an option, comma separated values.csv. So that is what a CSV is, just a file that contains all your spreadsheet data, but it separates the values by commas. So we click that, and you'll see I've now got Anki video sheet 1 because of sheet 1.csv. So this is the file we're going to be using. So let's jump back into Anki to see how to upload this. So now that we're back in Anki, it's really simple. We click on Import File and we find our CSV that we made and we click it and we click Open. And Anki brings up this import window. Now, it guessed it here. Sometimes this comes up as maybe tab or any other type of separator. Just make sure you set it to comma because that's what we've used. And as you can see here, it comes up question 1, 2, 3, and obviously that goes down to the other ones that we had, answer and tags. So that's already set up. For the import options, the note type. Now, note type is what Anki calls their flashcards. They call them notes, which then gets made into decks. The one we've created is just for a basic card. Like I said, there's all these different types, which if you want to look into, you can, which then that will change how you set up your spreadsheet in the first case. That's fine. So basic. You can see deck, because I already created test practice, I can click test practice. However, you can't create a deck from here. So you either have to make your deck first or add them to default and then later move them to the correct deck. So we're going to put in test practice. This feature here, update, preserve, duplicate, is say for example at a later date I re-uploaded this CSV, but I'd added on 2 more questions. What this feature does here is update is say for example I changed question 1's answer. It will read the question, and if it's the exact same, it will replace it with the new question. Preserve doesn't change the original questions, and duplicate does what it says, is that it will just make a separate question. So you'd end up with 2. Usually update is what you want. And the rest here is stuff you can mess with, but for now we don't need to. And then field mapping is where, so these tags here, front back tags, come from the basic setup. So if I changed it to something else, you'll see close has text, back extra tags. But in basic, we got the front, which is the front of the flashcard, which in our case we want to be set to the column labeled question. The back is going to be the answer, which we've set to answer, and tags is tags. So it's automatically just assumed 1, 2, 3 is that order. If I'd written these in a different order and put tags first, I can just very easily swap that around. Then all you have to do is you click import, and that's it. 7 new notes imported, and you could click show if you want to. When you click show, it brings them up. Okay, so it brings up this window. So we can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is our first, and let me just open this up so it's a bit easier to see because it needs to. There we are, so we can see the side. So question 1, front, back. So you can see here 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. Now it has created a card for question answer with the tag tags because that was our heading. Now you don't have to have that in the table. I like to put it in just because when it comes to the step of uploading it, it's easy to see which was which. What you can do easy though is if you right click on it, click notes, and then delete, that gets rid of that. Okay, you can notice here though, so like question 1, I've got the tag test1, question 4 had the tag test2, and question 6 has the tags test1 and test2. So we have just uploaded our notes, our flashcards, very easily. So you could imagine for if you had lots of flashcards, this is a quick way to get them all in. Now, there are card types which you can change. Again, look into card types, this bit here. Look into the information about Anki on how to use it for that sort of information. So if we come out of this, you'll notice test practice now has 6 new flashcards. So what you can do is you can go, okay, new study now. So, okay, 1, well, what's the answer for 1? The answer for 1 was A, okay? So what you can then do, it says here, again, hard, good, easy. This is where you have to be honest with yourself and go, well, how easily did you get the answer? Okay, so let's say, for example, I got this one super easy. I've practiced it a lot. I know it. I click easy. That the bit at the bottom just tells Anki when to show you the card next. Okay, because Anki is really powerful because it includes spaced repetition algorithms so that you are seeing the stuff that you struggle with more often. And when you've got something, it shows it you again, but a later date. So this is really helpful when you've got, hundreds of flashcards that you're seeing the right amount, but you're not skipping over things that you struggle on, but you're not just wasting time doing the stuff you know. So for example, 2, show answer. Oh, I thought it was C, so I'm going to say it again. And it will show me that again later. You can see it changes down here as well, what you've got. So we'll just quickly just rush through these. Let's say that was good, that was hard, that was easy, and we'll put this as again. So you'll notice now it's come back and it's shown me 2, because I said before, oh, I found that difficult. So I might click 2 this time. 6, I said I found difficult, so it showed it me again. I'm going to say, okay, that was hard. And 4 I'd picked as being hard or good. So you can see here this is less than the amount of time that it will show you again for. So this is really great. So let's just come out of this. So now that we're back on the main page, which you get to just by clicking Decks, you'll see here that there's nothing new in test practice, but there are 4 that I need to learn. So if you remember, we added 6 cards. The 4 that I need to learn, the ones that I said I didn't find easy. And this due section is if you've got new stuff. Now, if you click the cog here, this takes you into the settings of Anki. So you can either rename the deck, you can export it if you want to, you can delete it if you don't need it more. If you click options, you'll see that there is a load of options here. Now, I wouldn't really bother messing with this stuff at the bottom. This just adjusts those frequency things. So when you say it's easy, how long does it leave it for? So so I wouldn't mess with that. What I would consider looking into is here, there's timers. So I've currently got it to show, don't show timer on screen. This basically tells you how long you've got to answer before it automatically shows you the answer, which can be good if you're trying to test yourself and make sure you're not just sitting there for hours trying to remember one thing. This again stuff, display order, you can play around with it in the lapses, but again, I wouldn't really mess with it. What can be useful though is this daily limit section. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to re-upload a new set of flashcards, and I'll show you why this section here is important. So as you can see, we're back in the spreadsheet. I've just added 29 questions with answers. We're not going to bother with the tags because for this demonstration it's not beneficial. We're going to re-download that CSV, and then back in Anki, we're going to click import file again, make sure I click the right one, comma separated value. This will be, notice where it said the update type. This will replace the original. We're not going to change anything. We're going to click import. Okay, and it says 24 new notes imported, 6 notes already present in your collection. So what will happen is, if I'd have made changes to those 6 notes, it would have updated them, but I haven't, so that doesn't matter. So when we click show, again, I'm just going to go down to the question card and delete it. We've got all these here. Now, you'll notice we've got 29 questions. But if I go into my deck, it says I've only got 14 to learn. So that's weird. 14 new, but I've got 20. So 14, 4 to learn, 18. That's not 29. So what's happened to those 29? This is where this setting is really important here. If I go into options, daily limits. Currently, it is set so that I'm only given 20 new cards per day to learn. So if I had a deck and I uploaded it and it had 100 cards in, it would only give me 20 new of them each day. The reason it does this is to stop you from getting burnt out when you upload lots of cards. So you don't feel overwhelmed. Because to be honest, for your brain, it's not good to have so much new information. So 20 a day is pretty good. So if you're using this for exams, by the time you reach your exams, you would have covered everything, but it's a good way to stop you from getting burnt out. Now, if you want to, you can adjust this number by clicking the arrows or by typing. You can change it so that it's a preset. You can change it so that it only affects this deck, which is useful if you don't want to affect other decks. You can do it so it's only for today. So if, say, for example, you had 21 cards, you want, well, today I want to learn 21 new ones, you can do that. It will only affect it today. You'll notice when I change it, it gives me this warning here, maximum reviews per day. So reviews are different. Reviews are cards that you've already seen that you're looking at again. So these would be the ones that you said I struggled with, or the ones that you said were easy, but it's now been a few days since you last saw them. So Anki restricts you, which you can change, to only seeing a certain number of new cards every day, but you can still see the cards that you've already seen using this maximum reviews per day. I would recommend don't really change this. Obviously, depending on how quickly you need to learn, the flashcards, you're going to need to change this number. But if you're doing the right thing and revising early on, 20 cards a day is a good way to still learn new stuff, but not burn out and become overwhelmed, which is just going to affect your memory. But this is just so that you don't have this thing of uploading hundreds of cards and it only saying 14 new or 20 new. It's because we've already learned some already. You'll notice here, it says default. You can create a preset. So if you wanted a preset for summer exams, and in summer exams you want it 20 per day, but maybe you had winter exams which were in 2 weeks, 20 per day might not be enough to learn the new stuff, so you might want to make a new preset. One feature that I think is really useful in Anki, which is why we added that tag section to our spreadsheet, is the ability to create a filtered deck based upon a deck containing lots of cards. For example, if I click on test practice, which brings us to this window where we can study, at the bottom there is now a button that says custom study. So this gives us lots of options. You can choose to review forgotten cards. You can review ahead, means it lets you review further than what you set in the options. Preview new cards, lets you see the new cards. What's useful here is the study by card state or tag. If we click this, we get some options. Now, it first asks us to select how many cards we want. So if we had a large deck, we could choose to include all of them or only some of them. We can then choose how we want Anki to select from that deck. It could be new cards only, due, which is the ones that you need to revise, all cards in a random, all review cards, so that's the ones that you've already seen but need to practice again, or if you want everything, all cards in a random order. If we choose this and click choose tags, we then get an option to choose our tags. So there's two ways to do it. Require one or more of these tags is when we click this option, we can then select. So this is saying to Anki that it must contain test one or more. So we're saying, hey, it must contain test one. If we click both, we're saying, hey, it must contain test one and test two. If, for example, like we've got our question that is tagged test one and test two, but we don't want to include either of that for some reason, we can say select tags to exclude. So it will exclude test one or test two. Okay, so if we select test two and click OK, we now get 3 to review in our custom study session. If we click study now, you can see we get 5, 6, and 4, which were the ones that we tagged as being test 2. Now notice question 6 came up, which we tagged as both test 1 and test 2. So tags are really useful for breaking up the content. So you can tag it for a particular test. If you're doing GCSE, that could be paper 1, paper 2. If you were studying a language, that could be vocabulary to do with food, vocabulary to do with animals, that sort of thing. So tags and filtering decks is a really useful feature in Anki. So the final thing that I want to show you in this video is the sync feature. If you click sync, this requires that you've already set up an account, which I have done because I've logged in. So I'm just going to type in my email and my password that I set up for that account, and I'll show you how that impacts the web editor. So when I first loaded it, you'll notice here it says AnkiWeb collection has no cards, replace it with local collection. So local collection is what I've got stored on the desktop application. I haven't made any cards on AnkiWeb, so that's why I don't have any cards. If I click yes, what that's done is that synced the cards I've made to the web application. So again, you can now click sync every time you want to do that. If I pop on over to the web application, we'll see what that's done. So now I've gone to AnkiWeb, you can see here test practice has now popped up. Okay, now I'd already logged in. You just got to make sure that you do log in to AnkiWeb to do this. So again, I can click test practice, and here I can edit it. So for those people that are on iOS and don't want to pay $24.99 to be able to use the Anki app on their iPhone, you could just go onto AnkiWeb in a web browser on your phone and do it that way. So there's no need to use the app, and it has pretty much all the same features. The only reason I recommend using the desktop version is because there's no way, as far as I can tell, to add cards via CSV on the web application. So you do need the desktop if that's important. But what you can do is you can still add cards here. So if I said another card that was 55, answer was 7, and I click add, that's got added to my test practice. If I now go onto the desktop application and I click sync, I believe if I look in browse, which browse by the way is how you view your cards, that card 55 and 7 has now automatically been synced from what I made in AnkiWeb. So anything you make in the web application, you can sync to the desktop and vice versa. So this was just a video on AnkiWeb and how it's an excellent, mostly free, unless you're on iOS, tool. But the free features that you get on the desktop application and on the web application are fantastic. I mean, there is so much that you really can do some really complicated and intricate flashcards if you want to. For the basic stuff, it is a really simple application to use if you're just going to want to use front and back, which most students, that's all you're going to care about. And for being able to upload CSVs, which is great if you want to make it in a spreadsheet to be able to do multiple ones, or if you're downloading a CSV from somewhere, it's a great way where you can share flashcards amongst other people. So definitely, if you're a student revising for exams, or if you're somebody who's, for example, learning a language, then definitely give Anki a try.